I want to talk about prominent payment systems just for a moment. I'm going to try to link this to the productivity discussion. My understanding is that Interact's e-transfer service is considered a prominent payment system under the Bank of Canada. That's correct, right? It's been designated. But I also understand that Interact is in non-compliance with the standards that the bank sets out with respect to at least two of the standards. Primarily one, that the criteria for joining Interact is public. And two, that their pricing mechanism should be risk-based, not volume-based. Now, the problem I have here is that, one, there's no transparency. The bank has requested through the standards that there is transparency. And two, the fee schedule is secret. But we know that it's volume-based based on testimony yesterday at industry committee. So my question is there any enforcement actions against Interact to bring them in compliance?
So I think I think we're talking about two different things. So there's a set of global standards for payment systems that articulate the kinds of things you're talking about. Our enforcement powers relate to Retail Payments Act. So when you talk about an enforcement action.
Well, you regulate e-transfers, correct? Or they are considered a prominent payment system for e-transfers, right?
Yes.
And the Bank of Canada has listed that the standards it expects those entities, the prominent payment systems, to comply with. Interact is not in compliance. They've admitted it. It's not a secret.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, is the bank pressuring them to do the things that you've asked them to do?
Yes, we are working with them.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, you used the word enforcement measure, so yes. Are we working with Interact on those standards? Yes.
I guess I would say you have political cover to push them much further because it's 10 years since the bank has admitted that modernization to retail payments has a significant economic upside. And if we're worried about productivity, I would think that you could lean on this organization and Payments Canada, which, by the way, gave a sole source contract to an entity that's completely ripe with conflicts of interest, which is owned by the banks, right? They have an incentive to not modernize to protect that profit pool, but they're in non-compliance. So I'm very glad to hear that you're working with them.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is we are working closely with Payments Canada. I mean, having a fast payment system in Canada is an important step for productivity. It's an important step for our economy. It's an objective that we support.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll switch back. My understanding is it clear from or would it be safe to say from your testimony that the fight against inflation is not over, that there is risk that it could recelerate? Is that a fair assessment?
I'd say we've reached a very important milestone. We've got inflation low again.
But is the fight over? Is the fight over?
No.
Okay. So there's provincial elections all across the country. There's a federal election coming up at least within the next year. You've got provinces promising to send people checks. You have the PBO saying that the government's blowing through its deficit target. Sounds to me like a lot of fiscal stimulus. What recommendations would you have for governments who are considering a lot of fiscal stimulus when the fight against inflation is not over? Do you support additional fiscal stimulus?
So, normally we don't comment at all on fiscal policy. When inflation was high and we were working very hard to get inflation down, we did express concern that if there was a lot more spending, and in particular if fiscal spending was well above potential growth, that could make it more difficult to get inflation back down. We've now got inflation back down. So I'm really not feeling the need to comment on fiscal policy. So really, fiscal policy is your job. Monetary policy is
fair enough.
Job.
Would you say to tread carefully? Would that be a fair recommendation that you would provide politicians who can't help themselves but spend, including provincial governments? I'm an equal offender here.
Tread carefully, but look, I'm not here to give you fiscal policy advice. We are here to talk about monetary policy.
Thank you, Governor.